Well, welcome everyone to today's fantastic virtual tour for the Docents Know Glass exhibition. Very excited to have you all here today as we hear from two of our absolutely wonderful docents on why they selected some of the pieces that they did for this exhibition. Just a reminder that the exhibition does continue on through the 16th of May. So if you haven't had a chance to see the show in person, I certainly would invite you to come to the museum. We are open and running at limited capacity at the moment, but regular hours. So we'd love to have you come and see the show if you've not yet had a chance to do so. This is actually the second in a three-part series. Our first program that we offered was last month, and that was with Pat Rosnack, who's actually joining us today. So hi, Pat. Today, we're very fortunate to have with us Kay Hendrickson and Liane Butitta. And you'll see their fantastic images here on the front page here. Liane up there in the top left-hand corner, and then Kay on the middle right. Here in just a minute, I'll begin introducing you to these wonderful folks. This is Liane, and so Liane will actually present second today, but I did just want to say welcome, Liane. Thank you for joining us. And then I'll give Liane an introduction when we jump into her pieces. We will be going today until about 11 o'clock. So I would encourage you to think of questions. If you have questions that you'd like to ask, you're certainly welcome to ask them during the presentation, or if you just want to hold off on asking them until the end of the presentation, that's perfectly fine too. We're going to try to limit each of our docents' presentations to about 10 to 12 minutes or so. And so we'll go ahead and jump into that now. So we do have enough time for Q&A at the end. I do just want to welcome you all. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to getting to chat with our wonderful docents. So let's move on to Kay here. And Kay Hendrickson, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Kay, you've been volunteering with the museum since about 2011. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Kay is absolutely wonderful. She's got so much going on her plate right now. So I very much appreciate you doing this, Kay. In addition to being a co-curator of Docents Know Glass, Kay is also a registered nurse. And she is currently involved with helping give the COVID inoculations. So she was able to join us today, regardless of her busy schedule. And so I very much appreciate that. Kay is also involved with assisting seniors with tax preparation. So, add all of those three things together, especially at this time of year. I'm pretty sure we have less than a month now to submit your taxes if you haven't filed for an extension yet. So not to scare you here, but I know, Kay, you have a busy schedule right now, and so I very much appreciate you being here.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
So we'll go ahead and jump into Kay's selections. Just to give you an idea of how we're going to do the program today, we have a couple slides from each docent. These are not this is not an exhaustive list of the pieces that our docents selected for the show, but they're pieces that the docents mentioned that they'd like to talk about in this short presentation. So, Kay, take it away.
Okay, with my first selection, I just want to share with you, my selections really were geared to young people, children. Those are some of my favorite tours. So when I made these selections, it was always with that in mind. And you can see by my first two here how that would fit in with children. Interesting that both are Baccarat, but look at the dates. One is 1850, one is 1973. That's about a 125-year spread. So when you look at that original snake, which was, the picture doesn't show it just as well as it could, but it's really more of a red on the bottom and then green on the top, and then the salamander. And I don't know that most people know this. I certainly didn't until I did a little research, that to glass people, salamanders are special. And the reason that they are is salamanders are thought to come through fire unharmed. So with hot glass, that's an important thing, that you can come through fire. A good question to children on both of these is, were they real ones that they put in there? Or do you think that they made them out of glass? And they always have to think, till they come up with the right answer, which is they're glass. They're not real because they wouldn't survive the process. So, okay.
Aren't these fantastic pieces? We have some amazing flame worked animals in the collection, and it's amazing to me just how much fauna representation we have across both paperweights and contemporary glass. I was very pleased with your selection of these pieces. Taylor?
Okay, now we move into something very different. We work, these are, or is a piece from our Germanic collection from the Mahler estate. And here, again, referring back to children, some of the talking parts or stories of this one is that if you notice the little outcroppings, they're called prunts on this glass, and I take them back to a much earlier time when people didn't eat with forks and spoons and knives. They used their fingers, and when they were pulling apart meat, often they became quite greasy. So you can just see children and putting their hands out and thinking that yes, then they could grasp this glass very easily to drink something out of it. The other part about it is it's called wild glass because of where it came from in Germany, and sand, which makes is one of the integral parts of making glass in that area, has a lot of iron in it. So from the iron, we get the green color. So a lot of things, you can mix in a little science, a little history with having to have this for greasy fingers. So it all helps with the storytelling.
I personally don't use silverware quite regularly anyways either. Like if I'm eating ribs or something, I could really use a prunted walled glass beaker for my eating needs. Thank you, Kay.
Oh, you know, this piece, I didn't know, I was told I could pick 4 pieces, and I snuck this one in. This is a 5th piece. As I said to Casey, if there's any room, I would love to have this piece in. And this one, the photo here doesn't really do it justice. Please come to our museum and really see this one. But the strawberries, when you see them, it looks like there's dew on them and that they're just ready for picking. And also another part about, or that's special about this particular piece, is it's from the US, and it was in 1880. So shortly after the Civil War. So when you look at the delicacy of it and how they just made those strawberries that they're just, like I said, ready for picking or eating, it's really special. And then I can also talk to the children about fruit. In the late 1800s, a lot of fruits were really just coming into people that were coming from foreign countries, not necessarily strawberries, but things like pears and that. And so it was a novelty. And that's why a lot of the glass makers would exhibit pieces that had fruit in them, because it was something special. And again, you could ask children, are these real? Or is that glass? Because in reality, they do look real when you see this piece.
It's amazing looking at the pieces that you selected, Kay. It just reminds me how indebted we are to Evangeline Bergstrom and her legacy that she left behind for us. Just some absolutely fantastic works that are pieces that were given to her, given to the museum upon her passing. So I certainly recognize that, and I'd like to point that out when we're going through the program, that we are truly grateful for Evangeline's gift to the museum, not just the collection, but everything that that their legacy gave to us. We'll move on to the next piece here.
Okay, now they're on display. There really are 2 of these, but there are many more within our collection. And again, this is a Baccarat. When I talked to Casey the other day, I said, boy, I ended up picking quite a few pieces, my favorites that are Baccarat. I never realized that, but because they're so known in the glass world, and they've been doing this for years and years and years. So this is called a hand cooler. And there's a story that goes along with a hand cooler. And what it is that ladies, and look, this was in 1850. And again, I reference back to Civil War because that's a time that most people can think about. When ladies were wearing the big ball gowns, when they would go in the evening, they didn't have air conditioning. So the ladies would put these in their pockets and keep their hand around them, and that would keep their hand cool. And I don't know that you can see behind me, but I have some Glass Eye Studio. They're more a little bit like eggs, but I put my hand on one of those today because I was rearranging, and it is cool. Also, when I was doing a little research today, do you know Baccarat is still producing what they call hand coolers? And because we have a holiday coming up, we have Easter. Right now, one of the specials that they have is a crystal rabbit hand cooler. They actually advertise it as a hand cooler, and they show it in the palm of someone's hand. So this comes down from a lot of years and is still popular.
Thank you, Kay.
Okay.
Now, I do want to mention we're fortunate enough that the fine lender of this piece is actually on the call with us today. So, Gordon, thank you very much for continuing to loan this work to the museum. Sorry, Kay, I didn't mean to jump in front of you there.
That's okay, because this is I'm happy we are showing this one, the last of my presentation. This is my favorite piece in this whole museum. It is also my granddaughter Elisa's favorite piece. When I asked my grandchildren, almost 201, because I had asked them, what pieces would you pick? Elise particularly, but almost all of them picked this particular piece. And again, this photo doesn't do it justice, but this is a collaborative piece. And that is also important in a speaking point when you're talking to children of how two artists with different ideas could come together and produce such a stunning piece. John Kuhn works a cold work glass, and with a special glue that was produced not that many years ago, he was able to put these cubes together that just radiate light. And I can always ask, are there colors in that glass, or is it just the light? And it is the light being reflected. It's a piece that you can look at from so many different sides. Each time you see something different. If you saw a close-up of this work, you'll see the Paul Stankard, some of his classic things. There's a better piece. There's a bee in there, and children always love to find that bee. And of course, there's the root people and the intricate working of that. You can see the bodies, and children, again, they just go all the way around this piece and look at that. And then look at the flowers, all the flame working. So two stunning artists that came together to produce a piece like this. It is my favorite of all time pieces, just because of these two artists coming together with what they are well known for and putting it together. And indeed, it's called collaborative. And what better picture of that than this piece?
I absolutely love the root people and how they're exhibited in this particular piece too. It's absolutely amazing. I'm told by Kelly Stoll that the 18th is a particularly special day to you, Gordon. I think the 18th of this month here just is it the day after tomorrow is your birthday?
Well, I quit celebrating birthdays. When you get my age, you don't worry about that. But thank you anyway.
Happy birthday in 2 days.
Well, thank you. Well,
So,
Kay, I certainly appreciated your comments on that. I do miss this piece, but I really, it only stayed at my house for a couple months before Jan decided she wanted to display it for a special exhibit. And I'm certainly very glad y'all still have it. And every time I hear stories like what you just said, it makes me feel like I made a good decision. So I appreciate that.
Okay, well, watch out for my granddaughter Elise.
Well, fortunately, it is fairly large and heavy. I think she would have trouble getting it in her purse.
That's funny. Thank you, Kay, and thank you, Gordon.
Certainly.
So we're going to move on to Liane Butitta, and Liane has the distinction of being currently our longest-serving volunteer at Bergstrom-Mahler Museum of Glass. She's volunteered in various capacities since 1980. So how many years is that, Liane? 41?
41 this year. Yeah.
So in addition to being, one of our amazing docents, Liane also works in the museum shop. I don't want to speak for Lorene, though. I think Lorene would say that if it weren't for Liane, she wouldn't really be able to do what she does in the shop. Liane has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to paperweights, both antique, but even more so contemporary weights. A very good knowledge of a very solid foundation of knowledge of contemporary makers. And so you'll see that certainly is reflected in some of the pieces that she's selected today. So Liane, thank you for being here. Please feel free to take it away.
Okay. The first piece, and probably my favorite piece of everything we have, is the Barry Sautner, Doug Merritt piece, the Diatrea. I didn't even know it was called Wisteria Paperweight. For me, it's the Dove's Paperweight. I love this piece for many reasons, but one of the reasons I pointed out is because it's a small piece. It's upright. It's really not, it would not be effective as a paperweight whatsoever. But the intricacy and the delicacy of this piece, it's one of the most fragile pieces. I always tell people, ooh, if anything ever happened to it, I don't know what, and actually I was in a room one time with Barry Sautner when he was displaying pieces and something fell, one of his things fell. It was a horrible, horrible moment. And so I always think back to that. But the wonderful thing about Barry Sautner to me is that he started as a hot glass maker in the Vandermark Merritt studio, but he developed a condition he could not work with hot glass. And so he took his talent, all that creativity that he had, and drove it into pieces like this, which to me is an amazing thing. It's an amazing test of creativity and artistry. He's taking something, a block of glass, and actually carving into it. So it's very unlike what most pieces are, and most of our paperweights, most of the things that I chose are where the components are built and then surrounded. This is taking everything away in layers, delicately done. And so that you end up with a piece like this. So you're starting with just plain glass, and then not doing much except carving into it. So to me, this is a totally different artistry than what is on display in a lot of our pieces. But it's just such a wonderful piece of glass. It makes me happy every time I look at it.
We're very fortunate that we do have a small selection of cameo carved pieces in the museum. However, to be honest, most of them are the work of Barry Sautner and Doug Merritt. Just because Barry was, he was really the driving force behind these pieces. We did just recently acquire, and I don't know that I've shown you this piece, Liane, but we did just recently acquire another Barry Sautner paperweight, a gift of Gary McClanahan. So it's certainly, I'd love to show that to you at some point and see if I change your mind on your favorite.
Maybe. I don't think
might be challenging.
And and he didn't live, he was 57 when he died. He died much too soon. So I think the pieces that we have are particularly special to look at.
I did just see a question pop up, but I'm having a hard time going back and seeing it. Taylor, are you able to see a question that arose? Would you mind just reading it to us?
Yeah, Pat Rosenack wants to know, was the blue glass added after carving?
I don't think so. I think this, no. It was a layer, it would have been a big block you know, then the blue over that, then the white over that, and then carved out. The white would have been carved out first, then the blue would have been carved out. At least that's, I mean,
Correct.
I don't know, I've never seen videos of him working, but that's what I assumed was the case. I don't know, Casey, do you know more about that?
Well,
So,
that is
and-
definitely correct. This would
Yes,
have been
that's absolutely.
solid. And that's what Doug Merritt would have made. He would have made the blown piece, and then Barry would have carved it. But he would have started with a solid piece, not added color.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And if you look at the piece, unfortunately, this image it's a great image, but it doesn't necessarily show the detail of where the doves are joining the blue wreath portion, the wisteria. But if you looked at it, you'd be able to tell that that's one piece there too. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Taylor, thank you.
That's
You can jump over.
The way people think about glass being done for the most part, you know, it
Right.
really is. And you go back to those cage cups, you know, the Romans. So actually it's got a very long history doing that kind of work, carving out, but it's just not what most people think of. And it's not what most we have in the museum.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good comparison too. That's the same technique that was used to make the Roman cage cups, or an adaptation to that technique. Exactly.
So the next piece that I do truly love this for so many reasons. If you look at all of the pieces that I chose, most of them are pretty simple. This is a very simple weight in design. John Parsley was a wonderful man. I got to know him a little bit. He came to the museum because he came to glass so late in his life. I mean, he had a very full career and then started going to Wheaton Village and started messing around with glass a little bit and ended up putting a studio in his basement. So he did almost all floral pieces. The simplicity of this piece, but the beauty in this daffodil. He had a wonderful way of making his flowers very three-dimensional. The design is simple, but it's beautiful. I love that it's Vaseline glass, which I have a particular fondness for. And one of the reasons I really love this piece is that it was the gift of Betty de Kaiser, who was a wonderful, wonderful friend of the museum. I have to be honest and say that this piece was actually in our museum shop. And had I been at a point in my life where I felt like I could buy it, I would have bought this piece. I love this piece from the get-go. But Betty de Kaiser was a volunteer who also was a great friend of the museum, and she bought it. So it was kind of in the family. And then she was so kind to give it to the museum. So I'm so glad that they got it. It reminds me of John when I look at it. It reminds me of Betty de Kaiser. So for many reasons, that is a great piece of glass to me.
And we were very fortunate in Gary McClanahan's recent gift to be gifted with a couple more of John Parsley's paperweights. So I look forward to being able to share those with everyone as a part of the new On View show. Here's our next piece, Liane.
Yeah, you know, this is a piece that I point out to pretty much any group that's coming through, because we have many, many flame work or lamp work paperweights in the museum, but this to me is just the most spectacular piece that we have. I can't even conceive of how Debbie made, she's known for her dahlias, and you can see there are dahlias all over this. The many petaled flowers are exquisite if you just had a few of them in there, but I should at some point count them when I can see the image this well. But the amount of work that went into creating every one of those flowers and then encasing that and doing such a wonderful job of that makes this a spectacular piece to me. The flowers, the colors of the flowers, you know, just the intricacy of the whole design. I think this is a spectacular piece.
And this is actually a larger paperweight too.
Yeah, it is.
This image, again, when we're on Zoom here, it makes it a little more challenging for us to understand scale. So I appreciate it when y'all point the scale out. But this is a larger weight, and it's really a gem. It's definitely, I think if I remember correctly, Liane, there are 40 flowers in the setup. So it's just unreal, really.
We have a lot of dahlias in the collection, and many of them are antiques, and they are some of the most spectacular flowers to be produced. And I think because they show just how skilled the lamp worker was. But I think this just tops them all. And she does great dahlias anyway, but this is just a masterpiece. It needs to be bigger to have all those flowers in it.
Yeah, it really does. It needs that space. Taylor.
Carmen Lozar is an artist. I love that I went from, you know, beautiful little flower paperweights, and then we go to this piece by Carmen Lozar. You know, glass, one of the most wonderful things about glass is the amount of different kinds of things that can be done with it. And nothing shows it better than something like this, which I'm not even sure people would say, oh, that's glass. But you know, it's far from the paperweights. But I love all of the detail in that. And I love the wine coming out of that bottle. And most of all, I love that this piece was chosen by Susan Morrissey as a memorial to her mom, Eileen Payne, who was one of the best docents I ever knew at the museum. When I started, Eileen Payne and Cass Henkel were mentors to me. I could listen to them talk because they had stories about all kinds of things in the museum. And they were great women as well. And this came to the museum through memorial funds from both, mostly from, I think from, for Eileen Payne, but also for Cass Henkel. So, and it's a feminine piece, you know, so there are a lot of reasons again why I really like it. And it's just, again, so different from the other kinds of pieces that we have. Carmen Lozar is a wonderful artist, and this is a very creative piece.
Her flame working is immaculate. I absolutely love it. We included a couple pieces from her for the Sharper Edges show a couple of years ago. And this one, this piece is now on a black ground or a gray ground in the current exhibition for Docents Know Glass. And I think it looks remarkable on that gray ground as well. So I've been very pleased with it. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Liane.
When I started being a docent at the museum, we always had a Victorian glass basket as one of our permanent collections. Mrs. Bergstrom collected some. She didn't have a huge collection, but she did collect some, and we added to that. And we only saw those baskets come out around Easter time. Every year they'd come out, it was kind of, okay, let's get the Easter baskets out, and then they would go away again. So I never really got too attached to seeing them. But from the beginning, this basket was by far my favorite of all of the baskets. And I would point it out if it was ever on display. For one thing, it's Vaseline glass, which again, I love Vaseline glass. It would be stunning by that Daffodil's weight for sure. But it's a beautiful piece. And the reason I really like it, if you saw all the baskets that we have together, this would stick out, not like a sore thumb, but it would stick out like a shining star, because most of the other baskets are, to me, so overdone. I love the baskets because they were so creative, and boy, they came up with a lot of different wonderful techniques both in coloration and in the handles that they create. I mean, there were a lot of different creative things done with baskets, but the simplicity of this basket trumps them all for me. So this basket also makes me happy every time I look at it. And I'm glad that maybe it'll be out a little bit more now. These baskets show glass in an entirely different way than anything else in the museum. And I'm so grateful that we get to see them, because a lot of them were actually in homes, people's homes all the time. That's how they decorated with some of these, or they were gifts for weddings. So you get to see glass, not just as a decorative item, but something that everybody had, not just that special people had, or paperweights on a desk to keep papers from blowing away. But these were things that people actually put in their homes.
And you mentioned the Vaseline glass,
there it is.
Liane.
So cool to see it like that.
Yeah, these pieces, for those of you who aren't aware, Vaseline glass is also known as uranium glass, and it has a small amount of uranium isotope in it to give it its kind of green color that it has. And that uranium actually fluoresces under a black light. And so this was, we had this on exhibit, and I decided, I'm going to put a black light over it and turn all the lights off in the gallery to show you what this particular piece would look like when it's lit with the black light. So I just wanted to add that in here. Isn't that fantastic?
Thanks. I've never seen it like that. It looks so cool that way.
It almost looks like something it looks like slime from the Ghostbusters or something when you see
It's kind of that color.
Doesn't it? Well, I'm going to ask Taylor to jump to the last slide. We are just right at about 11 o'clock, but I do want to make sure if there are any questions that that folks have an opportunity to ask them before we jump off. Does anybody have any questions? And possibly you ask them in chat. I'm going to ask Taylor to just look over there to make sure that we didn't miss any. Well, since we don't have any other questions, I do just want to mention, I very much appreciate you ladies being a part of this. And I very much appreciate all of our fantastic docents who helped co-curate this show. In addition to Kay and Liane, on the call today, we also have with us Gail Dolan, and Gail was also a co-curator for the show. And then Pat Rosnack, who you can see here in the middle of our postcard advertisement. We will be offering one more virtual tour presentation. And so I would encourage you to jump online and check out when that's happening in April. It is available through bmmglass.com. And unfortunately, I don't have the date off the top of my head for that at the moment, but I would just encourage you to go to bmmglass.com to see when that's taking place. And we'll have a couple more fantastic docents giving that tour. Thank you very much, ladies, for your time today. Thank you all for jumping onto this call. Very much appreciate you. Very much appreciate the staff accommodating me live from Texas today rather than Wisconsin. Thank you very much, Taylor, for helping facilitate this. I very much appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing y'all at the museum very soon. Again, Docents Know Glass runs through the 16th of May. So we've got, about 2 more months for you to come out and see it. Do come out and see these wonderful selections by our fantastic docents. Thank you very much for joining. And I look forward to seeing you again real soon.
Thank you. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you for the presenters.
Bye.
Very nice job.
Thank you for turning out, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.